listening to The Starting Zone, a podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. And now, here are your hosts.
Well, hello and welcome to The Starting Zone, the podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. Today is November 14th. 2025, and my name is Spencer Downey. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing to the podcast. I'm joined today, as always, by my co-host Jason Lucas. Jason, how are you doing on this fine Friday?
Oh, Spencer, hello. Good morning to you. It's still technically morning Eastern time as we record this. It is Friday. It was a very weird, short week recording schedule for us, but luckily, I think Ian Hazacostas was sensitive to the needs of our recording schedule this week, so he provided us with an episode.
He did,
as he has done so many times in the past as we've been doing the show. So that's great. I'm doing well. I'm about to go out of town for a little while, so I am a little stressed because I got a lot of stuff to check off the list before we get going. So, but other than that, I'm good. It's been, there hasn't been a lot of WoW stuff since we last spoke, but there's been some, in terms of what I've been up to. And we got a bunch of news this week, right? We got stuff coming right around the corner. Beta is live now. I haven't even tried to get into it, but every time I watch somebody who's trying to stream it, they're like, I can't get into beta right now. So I figured, I'm going to do something else. But I mean, we got patch news. We got some, we got some other kind of future stuff coming up. I mean, it's been, even though we last spoke like 5 days ago, there's been a ton of stuff that's happened in that interval.
There has. You also have 2 birthdays coming up, I believe, that are rather important.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I mean, it's like, man, we're going on vacation. Then it's going to be straight into U.S. Thanksgiving, holiday season. Yep. My wife's birthday, my birthday. It's just, it's going to be a real blur until sometime in mid-January maybe. So
I mean, you just had some for your twins, right? We're just coming past that.
It's just the twins' birthday a couple weeks ago, and that was less of a big deal than maybe we did in some previous years because we have vacation coming up and all that. So it was like, all right, one thing at a time. it's like we're not their birthday's well past in the mind of a 9-year-old at this point. Fair. But this is sort of like part of there was a bunch of reasons why we wanted to go this time of year, and it's kind of like all that stuff. It's in between birthdays. It's it's in Jersey, like the school kids don't go that, like they have a lot of time off in November because of various reasons. So it's like it's a good time for them to miss some school, just stuff like that. So
well, nice.
It's kind of how it turned out, but it's like mega hectic, dude.
Well, I'm excited to hear about the trip when you get back and how much fun it was and everything that's going on, because pretty cool thing to do. But yes, all right. This past week, World of Warcraft. I actually have been out of the loop this past week. I had a passing in the family, sadly, last just after we recorded. Actually, is when I found out, and so there was a lot of family time. My grandmother passed, who was my last grandmother that I had, and so she was 103. And so had made it quite a long time, and so we mentally had prepared a bit, but it happened really quickly on the day that it happened, and so that was a little surprising to people, I think, and that caught people off guard. But that was part of the reason of the late release this week of it coming out on Tuesday as opposed to coming out on Monday of the episode, is I wasn't able to get around to editing it and focusing on that right away, and that also pulled me out of Raid on Sunday night and Monday night, so I wasn't in Raid for that, but I'm hoping the Reclear stuff went well for folks that were in there doing it. And it's just been a bit of a busy week with some family stuff. I'd already had a plan to go up and visit Ted, aka Sloot, in Toronto this week. So I did go up and visit him on Wednesday and then travel back on Thursday. So spent some time up there, and back today doing a record. And so we'll see what the next little bit has in store as far as WoW stuff goes. But this week has been a bit of a break for family.
Right. Yeah. It's miraculous that we found a window to record a show this week. But hey, here we are. For me, we had one raid night, which we're trying to do 2, but the roster stuff is really tough to navigate right now. We did have a decent group together for Tuesday. We full cleared heroic. We got our final renown tick, so we got that 15% buff stack all the way up. We got the teleport. We could teleport to Manaforge Omega now, so that's cool. And actually, we had enough people and time and interest. We managed to kill first 2 bosses on Mythic, so that's cool. I mean, for a couple people, I think it was their first time getting those. And also that means, hey, Mythic choice from the vault, and a bunch of us have Lumathar dead. We have Lumathar loot in the pool and all that, and so it's kind of a big deal. There's some good loot from those first couple bosses, so even getting that one vault choice is cool. I don't know how much Mythic we're going to be doing. It's going to be a real kind of touch and go situation for the rest of the season. I'm obviously going to miss all of next week because I'll be on vacation, and then we roll into the holiday week, and then stuff gets really wonky. But my goal is to make the most of what we have, and if we have interest and we have people, we're going to do as much as we can do, and I'm going to not take it personally if we can't do what I would prefer to be doing, right? But I do think, we're starting to have these conversations of like, there are chunks of the roster we need to literally rebuild for Midnight. We need to stop relying on people who we know are unreliable, right? Or, people that we've been playing with for a long time who their interest has kind of fallen off, and the peaks of when they're engaged in the game, they get shorter and shorter. We can't roll into an expansion going, well, that person will be around, because we know that they won't be after a couple weeks. So, I think we need to start being realistic and kind of recruit with an eye towards that. But, one raid night meant Wednesday just ended up doing some keys, which was cool. It was cool to get keys all the way done and get them done early. I don't know that I'm going to be maxing out my vault every week going forward, but there's still a couple items that would be cool to have from the pool. Like, I'd like some side grades on some stuff that I'm carrying around if I could get it. So, still one of the best ways to go about it, especially if you're not consistently Mythic rating. Stuff just really doesn't feel like it matters, I mean, 12s are so easy at this point if you're turbo boosted and like close to max item level and close to optimized. I mean, we're doing 12s handily with people who are trying out a spec that they're not comfortable with, or people who aren't really like, they're not people who I would bring to do my first 12. You know what I'm saying? Like, they just don't have the knowledge or the practice or the seat time with the dungeons. And it's like nothing even remotely matters. We just move through them, fill up the vault. So what I've been doing instead is I have been doing the thing in Legion Remix. I've been doing my Mythic raids every day, pretty much every day that I can. I've been just running through those, which is just such a weird experience. Like, there's just no gameplay. You have like 3 or 4 or 5 people that just carry the whole group, and the bosses die in 5 to 10 globals, and then you speed run to the next one, and then you're done. But I'm starting to really power up. I'm max item level now. I'm at like 180% verse. What I've started doing is just stacking speed. Like, anything that's speed is what I want, because the stats are so absurd. Nothing really matters, right? Like, everything's up so high. It's like, I'm not going to compare something on the basis of crit versus mastery or avoidance versus leech. Just give me speed, and then I could run through the dungeons and raids and the outdoor world faster. So I've been doing that. I need like 3.5 million bronze, I think, to buy out everything.
God. Yeah, fair.
I actually, like, I had a fair bit of stuff, from obviously I played Legion a lot, so I had a lot of collectibles. There's also some, I might end up doing like leveling some more characters just strictly for the bronze savings, because you can get the class mounts and stuff. And there's the fell flavored class mounts that you get just for leveling up, and they're like 20k bronze a piece. Leveling shouldn't take very long, but what I might do is just continue kind of what I'm doing, and as you go, you get your bonus XP from doing your infinite research and all that stuff. And once we get into the home stretch, then maybe I'll like level tunes and get the class mounts and all that, in addition to all that extra bronze, and it should be really fast. So
you must be getting close to character cap on your account, man, with the amount of leveling characters you do.
Well, yeah, I would be over it. Well, what I'll have to do is like make a character who exists for the time running project specifically, and then I'll have to just murder them on the way out and then replace them with the next one.
That's so weird.
I don't have a choice, right? Yeah. So that's probably what I'm thinking. That's going to be like the kind of the tail end plan for Remix. Like, I really wish it was fun. It's just not. It's just a bunch of chores to do to then buy stuff off of vendors. I don't really get any particular pleasure, or I don't really think it's cool to like, oh, we killed Jaden before the darkness phase even happened. Like,
Right.
We're not playing the game. We didn't do anything.
Yeah.
We just showed up here and we pushed our artifact button and the boss died and then we looted it. Like there's no skill expression and there's no decision making and none of it is impressive to me. Like, oh, I'm soloing plus 30 keystone. You're not playing WoW. Like but there's a lot of cool stuff from it. It's cool content to revisit. I mean, obviously I love the content itself, but I don't know, man. I keep trying to find like what's fun about it, and I just can't. Like leveling and powering up wasn't fun. Now I'm at I'm starting to get decently high power, and it's like this end game stuff is not fun. So, and you may ask, you're probably in your car or whatever right now. Ask yourself, well, then why are you playing it, you idiot? And that's a fair question, and I've wrestled with that a lot over the last month and a half. And I want to collect the stuff, so they got me on the hook, right?
Uh-huh.
Like it worked. I want the stuff. I want it, so I'm gonna play the mode to get the stuff.
This is the closest Blizzard gets to free rewards. It's the closest they get. Is we will give you rewards if you dedicate time. There will be zero challenge. Just dedicate time, please. Is the closest they get to that. So yeah, that's what this is. I have not done a lot since the first week that this came out, so I'll have to have a look at some remix stuff in the next couple of weeks to see where I'm at. But there's just so much happening and so much coming out that I don't know, man. It might be another one of those ones where the goals just don't get hit for remix for me. I don't know. We'll have to see what I pick and choose out of it and where that goes. But we have a lot to talk about in today's show with a big article from Ian, so we're going to hop into what's going on this week right now. All right, this week is the Arena Skirmish bonus event where the Sign of the Skirmisher buff is up, increasing honor gains from Arena Skirmishes by 50%, and there's a quest to win 10 of them, which rewards 110 conquest and 2,000 honor. If you are out there doing your weeklies, then it's a Titan Disc Fragment week coming up. So you'll be out there doing your delves and your dungeon bosses and your treasures and rares to try and get your 100 Disc Fragments together and be able to make sure that you get your spark as well as the other rewards for the week, if that's something you're trying to do. And then the brawl for the week is the Temple of Hotfixes, where if you are someone who enjoys the Temple of Hotfixes, this is the I guess slightly switched up rules. I like this one a lot. You enter Temple of Hotfixes, and basically there's an orb that you can play hot potato with and throw it around to your friends. So you continue to build up the debuff that makes you do increased damage and take increased damage and makes your character larger. And you can essentially take those debuffs that you have and then just throw them to a friend with this orb. And you can either do it strategically, where you're like, yes, I've thrown it away from where the people are coming from and I'm able to survive, or even if I die, it's fine because they didn't get our orb. Or you can do it to just troll your friends and be like, hey, I have 11 stacks of this, I'm throwing it onto you. And that person's like, no, not me. And then they're toast. And that is what it is. And they get blown up. So it's just a lot of fun. I enjoy Temple of Hotfixes in general as a PvP battle round. So doing the brawl of Temple of Hotfixes is just like a different way of doing it. And there's two brawls that involve this, right? Because there's also the brawl where they have the one where you have reduced spawn times and whatnot too. So yeah, it's pretty neat. So
this one has the quick spawn timers. It's only a 5-second respawn, which is awesome. And then there's also the variant with what it has, like there's like orbs? Fewer people in it or something.
Two orbs and fewer
like
people. That's what it is. Yeah. They're both cool.
It's just it's like a simple format, so you can play with it. So that's what's cool about it. What I really like about this one is the 5-second death timer. It always feels so bad to be sitting there waiting on a res,
True.
Yeah. So you just like right back up and in it, and it is pretty funny if you throw somebody a really hot potato and they blow up as a result of it.
True, very true. The world bosses are still up and going, and if you're doing either Godfather or Reshnor, you'll get yourself some Warbound loot. The 688 from Reshnor, 642 from Godfather, so do what you will with that. Sometimes it's just about getting transmog, so feel free, but 688s are still like decent to throw onto a brand new character who's just getting up there towards max level. Mythic Plus affixes for the week. We believe it is going to be a Devour week. That is the guess here, that players periodically are afflicted with a healing quota while in combat, and essentially they get you can either dispel that healing quota off of them, or you can heal through it. which once it's dispelled or healed through, gives your group a increased max health buff, as well as a increased crit buff. So this is the week where we always say, hey, if you can take a dispel of some kind, please do. Please use it every time this pops up. It's just nice to free up your healers dispel so that they can be hitting it on the more important debuffs that, essentially are make or break for some of these Mythic Plus dungeons, whereas your poison dispel or disease dispel or, decurse or whatever it is may not be nearly as critical. So it's certainly better for you to use that and free that up. Also, it saves healers from having to use cooldowns to try and get the debuff off of everybody. So certainly a helpful thing you can do during Devour weeks if you're doing something sub 12.
Yeah, it should be. That's what it should be this week. But also when we're in that sort of inside out part of the season rotation, which is where it got kind of weird last time, I think our schedule is back on track. But obviously check your keystone before you push the button, probably.
Yeah.
But it's I gotta think. I haven't actually done a Devour in a while. Certainly not post Turbo Boost. I've done some keys with affixes since Turbo Boost, and I don't know, what's the one with the ad that you kill, Void Bound? Like, that thing just kind of feels like it melts at this point. And this is the other one that involves some kind of a tuning thing. So I suspect it's probably not too bad to heal it off, but still, especially if you're playing in an uncoordinated group, I mean, like you mentioned, bring some tools for this one so that you're ready to handle it. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. Obviously everybody is wherever they are in their keystone journey, but I feel like getting to 12 and living in a world where you don't have to deal with affixes is pretty doable in the game at this point. So, if you need to still get up there, this is probably, I got to feel like this is a pretty good affix at this point in the season, just because everybody has so much power. I wanted to mention too, just as a quick aside, like we talked last week about like what our affixes going to look like in Midnight, and nothing is final, nothing is official yet. But now that we have beta and we have some data that is mineable, it looks like these affixes are just coming back with some tuning changes, just making stuff a little bit, easier to deal with, longer cast times and stuff on the things where that's a factor. And one change that's in the data that may be coming in Midnight, it would be awesome if this went live, is that Devour may include a 10% slow, like a snare, which would give you so many different options to break it, right? Avatar or Tiger's Lust or Blessing of Freedom, and power shift, all that stuff. So if that is actually going to happen for Midnight, I think that's a great addition to this, because it doesn't lock you into, maybe there's this really niche talent that the only thing I'm going to use it for is Devour, but I don't really want to build that way, and it's a 3-minute cooldown, right? Like, if we have other options other than that, I think that would be that'd be really great. So hopefully that comes to fruition. But for this week, if you're in there, make sure that you're built to take care of yourself. That's my advice.
Yeah. It'll also be an extra poke to people to actually bring something to remove it, because moving slow is no fun. So hopefully that's just the other level of encouragement. Right.
And it's cool. It's like 10% is like enough that you might notice it, but it's probably not gonna be life threatening in most situations, right? So it just adds a lot of counterplay, I think, if they end up going that way.
Yeah. Starting up on Sunday is WoW's 21st anniversary. It's going to run from the 16th of November until the 7th of December. So if you're someone who wants to check out all the events around that, I'm sure there'll be a blog post that comes out probably on Monday this week, saying, hey, FYI, this is what's happening with the anniversary event. Because if we don't get it later today, then that's probably the nearest day that they'll do a news announcement about this sort of thing, because we don't have anything about it yet. So we'll see what this has in store. But I would certainly be heading down to the Caverns of Time and checking out what's going on Sunday to see if there's something new for you to check out, and whether or not it's worth, investing the time in. Either way, you're going to have the trivia questions, like move your alts out there that you want to passively level, get the trivia question stuff going on. You're going to have the buff for extra experience gain and whatnot you can do there. There's probably going to be, was it Korvac or whatever his name is, for doing the battleground and do all that stuff for Ultrac Valley and get the mounts. Like, all that stuff's probably all coming back. And we'll have to see if there's actually like the whole fair that took place outside of Caverns of Time with lore walking and whatnot, because that was really cool too. So I enjoyed the storytelling and everything else, where everyone in the audience would participate in however they wanted to participate with the stories and what was going on. So very cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was really hoping that we would have details on Anniversary prior to press time for this episode, but it did not work out that way. My guess is we'll probably get the blog about the Anniversary event about 2 hours after we finish recording today.
It could be.
So,
it could be. Yep.
Just check it out. I mean, obviously it's going to be big news as it's going on, so I'm sure you'll find the details on it. I mean, what they did with Anniversary last year was awesome. I'm not expecting that kind of round of new stuff to it, but hopefully they reuse a lot of it for people that maybe missed out on it or didn't get everything they wanted. I'm sure there'll be some cool new stuff. I think it's reasonable to assume like a 21% XP buff. I wonder if that's applicable to your time runners. Just really bust out that leveling, right?
Yeah.
So we'll see. But that remains to be seen. But yeah, I mean, it's it's a decently long event, but it's not going to be like a 2.5 month long deal like we had last year.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm going to miss the first week of it, I guess, just about. So hopefully there's not any kind of. Hopefully there's login bonuses and maybe a drop from a world boss or something or some new event to do. And that's how the new thing gets distributed. Because if I got to grind up currency, then I'm going to be busy.
I'll send you a Discord message. Be like, "Uh-oh, Jason, you have to be real busy on characters here." Yeah. Notable hotfixes for the week. This is actually kind of a significant one for folks here. In Delves, they nerfed Kaiveza, basically the big boss that you can go and do the question mark difficulties on this go around. They made it so that Dark Massacre, Nether, the ambush now happens after 3 seconds as opposed to 2 seconds on question mark difficulty, so that makes it a bit easier. But then they also made it so that it now tolerates this much wider degree of facing the images that you need to actually face on both difficulties. So it's much easier to do the mechanic of rotating your character to face the right spirit or image or whatever it is you want to call it. So that is huge. So for folks that still want to do this boss at some point, I'm one of them. I didn't put the effort into doing it earlier. I will take advantage of this wider angle and be able to knock that out before we hit December 2nd and we start moving to pre-patch and whatnot. I'm not saying it goes away on December 2nd. I'm just saying there's gonna be a lot more stuff to do on December 2nd. So certainly keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, I still got to do question mark, and I'm a little bummed, I guess, that I didn't do it pre-nerf, but also the tolerance on facing the thing was a little tight, and it's it can be kind of frustrating. I had to use a console command to change my turn speed to make when I was doing question mark. I was like, well, I'm turning so slow. It helped a lot actually, just to nudge it a little bit so I could turn a little bit faster, and then it's because you go too fast and you over rotate, and then you get it anyway, right? But yeah, so I haven't done it since this came in. I do need, this is on my list for end of season stuff. It's a cool fight. There's an interesting thing with the design in this fight because it is hugely pass fail.
Yes.
You either do it right or you die, but somehow it's satisfying and decently fun. I liked it maybe the best. I mean, Zekvir was pretty good.
Zekvir was my favorite.
On Underpin, I didn't particularly like.
No.
Ultimately, even though I thought it was easier, I did it in fewer pulls and everything. Kaiveza, I think, is just really. I enjoyed doing it on question mark, so I got to do it on hard mode. I was waiting for I'll get to max item level and all that. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this. I want as many advantages as possible to do it. Well, I'm kind of at that point now. There's really no big upgrades sitting out there for me, so. I guess it's kind of time. It's time to actually get it on my radar for the season.
Yeah. So part of Nexus Prince's the boss inside the raid mechanics is essentially the same mechanic, the spirit mechanic on Mythic. So if you're in there, what happens is the first time, depending on how many debuffs you have on your character, because you know how you have to stand in the slam to remove a debuff, and if you don't remove all your debuffs, then you get mind controlled and attack everybody. That happens even on LFR, you get mind controlled and attack everybody. Well, depending on how many debuffs you have, it will base the amount of spirits that spawn. So when you're missing one debuff, you get one spirit to spawn that you have to turn and face during the fight while doing other mechanics and dodging beams and stuff. And as soon as that goes down, as soon as you clear down to 2, you then get 2 spirits. And when you've completely cleared your debuff, you get 3 spirits that spawn. So essentially, just before you go into your intermission phase for platforms, you will have turn to one spirit, turn to another spirit, turn to another spirit, and anyone who messes that up will then get mind control because you'll get a debuff. So when you get hit by, if you do not face a spirit properly, it will give you back a debuff, which means that's what was messing a lot of teams up is they'd be going into that platform phase, and like half the raid would get mind controlled because they messed up their spirits partway through it. And you had to nail it both the first, second, and third time that they spawned with 1, 2, and 3 of those spirits when you're doing it. So I feel like mentally, from doing some of that prog, I'm fairly prepared for what I need to do for this question mark boss. But, we'll see. It might just, be an easy knockover. Who knows? We'll have to see what it's like now, because I have not tried it in a very long time. So, yeah. All right, there's a prologue blog post that came up here for the launch that's happening on December 2nd, which they are calling The Warning. So the pre-patch that we are getting for the next expansion for Midnight is called The Warning. And it is going to be the ghosts of Koresh behind us, supporting Azeroth and standing on the precipice of this Xalatath's big, essentially relentless void assault that's going to be taking place. They highlight what is going to be coming with this. So obviously we get the housing early access on December 2nd. We get the Midnight Prologue campaign, which is going to take place. We have the revamped new and returning player experience that's going to be taking place as well. That's the new level up stuff that they talked about and we've talked about before. There's going to be lore walking for elves, the elves campaign. It's not just for elves, but it's to learn about the elves. That's another thing we've talked about previously, but it's super exciting. It's coming on the 2nd. So that's why one of the things I say, there's a lot more to do after December 2nd. That's one of those things. The Pandaren Heritage Armor is going to be doing its thing as well, which is very cool looking. Turbulent Timeways kicks off. So there's going to be all the time walking dungeon stuff again. And if you're someone who wants to get the mount and everything else, you got to get on that early and stay with it. The Housing Decor weekly quests will launch. So people, even if you have not purchased the expansion yet and you don't have access to housing, you can still do these Housing Decor weekly quests to unlock the housing items that you're looking to get. So that's a thing. And then a week after that, so on December 9th, the Brawlers Guild is going to launch, which I'm very grateful for. They've put a week in between, because that's going to be the next thing I focus on when it goes live, is hopping into Brawlers Guild on December 9th and checking it out. And that'll be a lot of fun. So yeah, this is a lot coming up. I'm really excited to see what people sort of think about this content when it goes live on December 2nd. But housing wise, they highlight it here. It's not just decor collection and room decorating. It's neighborhoods are going live. Guild neighborhoods are going live. You're going to be able to create your neighborhoods and pick your housing. All that stuff is going to take place on December 2nd for people who have this early access from pre-order. And it's certainly going to be worthwhile getting in there and claiming your plot that you want inside the area that you want. So it's going to be a big deal for a lot of folks. I'm looking forward to it, man. It's coming up soon.
Yeah, it's weird to think about. We're, a few weeks out here from maybe the biggest feature addition ever to the game.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to call housing that at this moment. Yeah, I mean, it's almost actually here. Obviously, you need to have a Midnight license on your account. You can do that if you want to. I mean, if you're on the fence, you want to wait and see how Midnight turns out. And if you want to buy into it, you can do that, but you won't miss out on being able to collect decor and stuff.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, they actually put out a blog about it as well that we'll get into a bit more, but it's you won't be able to, set up and decorate your house, but you won't be missing out on being able to progress it in some ways. And you can also visit, your friends' houses or whatever, if they have Midnight and you don't. Yeah, I'm looking forward to new campaign questing. I think it's been a while since we had some. We didn't get any in .5, right? There was no .5 was just Turbo Boost and Legion Remix, so there really wasn't any new content. I'm looking forward to the new questing. I mean, lore walking. I loved what they did with lore walking in the .1 cycle. Obviously, elves are of great interest to me in terms of the overall story and the fiction. So really looking forward to new lore walking. And this is really a feature that I hope we get a little taste of, all these interstitial patches, every .5, .7, we should get some lore walking if they can squeeze it in. I think it's a great feature. I'll certainly be doing my Pandaren Heritage Armor. I don't love the design really, but there's some cool elements. And I think part of it, I mean, I play a Pandaren monk, right? My monk is a Pandaren, and monk is cool because you have this kind of unarmed combat style. Obviously, you have a weapon equipped and all this, but you're not swinging it in combat generally. So also you can sort of do a monk transmog that works without putting a full set of armor on. There's something cool about a monk who's just wearing kind of robes and, footwear or something. So I think I really like the one there's sort of like an Alliance themed one and a Horde themed one and a Wandering Isle themed one. I really like the Wandering Isle themed one with the green on it. So I might set that up. The Heritage Armor questing a lot of times is some of the best story questing they put in the game. So it's looking forward to what they do with the story and just revisiting that. One thing that's weird that I just noticed, the graphic has changed from what they put out initially to what is now live on the website, because there was also a box in the launch December 2nd row for Winds of Mysterious Fortune, which is the leveling bonanza event where you get the potions, you get the XP potions and the stat potions and all the extra bags, and you get the buff. So I'm wondering if maybe that's going to start up later and it's still coming, or what. I will say I saw that and I'm like, oh, cool. I love Winds of Mysterious Fortune. But then I went, wait, I have all 13 classes at max, so I don't really need that. And also, I think Legion Remix is just a better way to level a tune. If
you've already leveled a character inside Legion Remix, it definitely is. Yeah. But if you're someone who is looking at their first time going through it, you might want to invest time in the live game more or do live game stuff more. It's up to you. I mean, whatever you do in Legion Remix does carry over. It's just whether or not you want those rewards. I agree that Legion Remix is probably the fastest way to level at the moment. Yeah. Yeah. I'm wondering if maybe they'll do a Winds of Mysterious Fortune after Remix ends. Could be. Because Remix should end with a few weeks in between before pre-patch. So maybe that was it ended up in the graphic by mistake because it's going to come in this cycle, but not quite yet. So yeah. But a lot of cool stuff to do. Yeah, this is a good reason for me to get Kai'Veza done maybe over the holiday break or something before we roll into this patch, and then try to get all this stuff done the first week so then I could do Brawlers Guild the second week. Yeah, I mean this is a pretty nice .7. I wonder if it almost feels a little bit backwards to me. This feels like it should have been .5, and then Remix should have been .7. But I guess they wanted to have more of a gap between the end of Remix and the beginning of Midnight Pre-Patch and all that. So yeah, I don't know, man. Remix just didn't. There was not a good time to put that thing out. I have to say, no. It stepped on everything that it didn't matter if you released it now. It didn't matter if you released it 2 months ago. It steps on something. So it's just the nature of it. The good time to put it out would be 2 or 3 weeks after War Within Season 4 would launch. Right, exactly. Which they weren't doing. That's why it worked so good at the end of Dragonflight, and we just don't have that window here. So exactly. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, really, really good .7 though to wrap up, man. A lot of times that final patch is just here's some little nugget of something, and here's we're just getting stuff ready or something. Yeah. There's some. I mean, obviously, the housing feature is huge. It's I mean, let's be honest, it's an expansion feature, but it's also not specific to any expansion. But so we're just getting early access to it for people that have the license. I mean, that's massive. And if that is something you want to engage with, there's basically endless hours of time that you can spend in there. But, also I think they're doing some cool stuff to move the story forward and also build up a bunch of backstory and just set the table for Midnight with lore walking. So I'm really excited about it. I think this is going to be cool stuff to do. It's all stuff you can do by yourself. You can do it at your own pace, and it doesn't matter if you can assemble a group for it or not. It's just stuff to go check out in the game and experience. So exactly, I think that's a good run up to the pre-patch. Yeah. So they did a second blog here that sort of highlighted more about what housing is going to be like for players who are hopping in there and getting access to it. And they again just highlight who has access. So returning players, you're going to get a quest as long as you have Midnight. The biggest defining factor of who has access is, do you own Midnight? If you own the Midnight expansion, you have access to build a house inside of a neighborhood. If you do not have Midnight, then you have access to earn the rewards towards housing. So you can earn all of the items that people who have Midnight already could place in their house. You just can't place them in a house because you don't own a house, because you don't own Midnight. And you can go and visit neighborhoods. So you can do that as well. So if your friend has Midnight and you're I want to check out housing, but I don't want to buy the expansion yet, but I want to see what this is like, you can go and visit neighborhoods and visit your friends and see what their places are like, or whoever else has set it up. Or, maybe people in your guild have been, investing in housing and you haven't, but you can go and visit their space. So that's all going to be there. There's going to be a new tutorial that's going to be accessible for folks to check out about, how to actually decorate your home and what that looks like. You're going to be able to obviously join neighborhoods. That's, a given. And that'll be either a public neighborhood where anyone can join, or a guild neighborhood, which is established, like a specific established neighborhood that is going to require at least 10 active players inside your guild in the last 30 days. And it will let you actually participate in that and create a guild neighborhood. So that's a thing. You're able to buy a home. So you scout your neighborhood for the perfect location and then purchase a house where you want to put down your house. Keep in mind, your houses are faction locked. So you can have a Horde house and an Alliance house. But that Alliance house will be for all of your Alliance characters. And that Horde house will be for all of your Horde characters. You will not be able to have a different house for each of your characters. It's just one house for one faction is the way that they went about doing it. However, you can be someone who puts down your Alliance house and Alliance neighborhood and uses Horde decor, if I remember correctly. You are able to use the decor from the other faction if that's something you're wanting to do. So keep that in mind as well. Decorate with flair. Basically, they talk about how there's over 600 plus housing items to be collected, like right at the launch of this, if you haven't already collected them already, because you'll have achievements and whatnot that date back. And it's everything from like accents to structural to lighting to functional furniture to all sorts of crazy things stylized wise. There's going to be professions where you're collecting resources to craft particular decor items. So you're going to be going back and checking all your different professions from the earlier profession expansions and seeing what that looks like. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of that going up on work orders even. I'm sure we'll see work orders for some of the housing decor stuff start popping up too. So there's some potential for people with that as well. Begin your leveling up your home. So players who purchase their homes will be able to begin leveling their home up as they add to their collection, even before Midnight Expansion releases. If you don't have a home yet, don't worry. As you collect items for your home, you'll still receive experience, which is applied to your home once you purchase the Midnight Expansion for your new in-game home. So yeah, lots going on there as far as the housing stuff goes. So certainly worthwhile investing in your house and your housing stuff if that's something you're wanting to do in the Midnight Expansion. If like housing is something that's got you excited, I would start looking up like Wowhead guides and whatnot about what achievements to get or what quests to complete or whatever it is, because when this launched on December 2nd, it is go time for a lot of this stuff for sure.
And if you don't care about it, then there's really no impact on your character progression. So
exactly.
That's the other nice thing. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. That's kind of the angle we haven't been approaching it from. But yeah, I mean, I guess not everything is going to be live, right? Because we're waiting for the feats and everything, like the neighborhood progression stuff to come online. But like in terms of you being able to set up your house, decorate it, do what you want with it, you'll be able to do that. Obviously, you won't have every decor piece that's come. I can't imagine that we're not going to get a huge influx of them with Midnight, right? Like once all the expansion content's available, but you still have a ton. I mean, 600 plus items to collect and, target specific stuff, go get it and set it up in your house, whatever. That's going to be a little mini game unto itself for a while with the launch of this feature. And obviously they'll be adding a lot of decor on a regular basis. So just, a whole new thing to hook into and collect. Yeah. Or just go do dungeons because you don't care about decorating your house. Like that's the beauty part. This is not a garrison. This is not like where you're supposed to spend your time if you don't want to. Yeah. So I love that implementation, but I'll definitely be getting in there and obviously like doing housing stuff right away. We just got to figure out some particulars on kind of how the private neighborhood stuff works, right? Like we know we have guild versus charter stuff. I'm in like a really big guild that is going to require multiple layers. And like the question becomes, can we designate like specific layers for specific sets of players? Like, can we set a layer for a particular raid team and then they have that layer and then their members can arrange their plots together on that layer. And then you assign layers to individual teams. If so, then maybe that's a structure, or maybe we have like a big guild neighborhood that's if it's more dynamically assigned by the server and load balanced, and it's like the players who want that can have that, and then we have charter neighborhoods for individual teams. These are things we don't quite know how they're going to work in practice right now, but those are kind of the considerations. But it seems like it should be really simple to kind of set up the housing that you want to have. You can play it how you want to play it with your neighborhood, and you can pack up your house and move it if your decision changes, right? Like you're not locked into anything with it. So it seems really cool. I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, it's really the beginning of a whole new era for the game. I think it's going to create a whole new type of player. There's going to be players who this is their main focus with, how they interact with the game, I think.
Yeah, I think that it's going to be a really, for people who want to focus on housing, it's going to be a really interesting, dynamic way to interact with the game. It's certainly going to create a whole new wave of content creators who are making housing, talking about housing, sharing housing details and layouts, and interior designers and all sorts of wildness that'll happen with that. So it's kind of like a whole new door that's being opened to World of Warcraft. So certainly interested to see what they do with it. All right, midnight beta test is live, sort of. As Jason mentioned, there's a lot of issues with stability of getting online and staying online because it's such a popular thing to check out. In that expansion, there is the expansion introduction as well as the midnight campaign, leveling from 80 to 90. All the zones are accessible, including Eversong Woods, Zulaman, Harandar, and Voidstorm. The Silvermoon City Hub is there. The legendary Blood Elf capital serves as Midnight's campaign hub, while both factions face new threats, so keep that in mind. The new allied race, Haranir, is available for people to check out, which can be Druid, Hunter, Mage, Monk, Priest, Rogue, Shaman, Warlock, or Warrior. So lots of different classes to check out there. The Devour Demon Hunter specialization, that mid-range Demon Hunter specialization, is also available for people to test. The Void Elf Demon Hunter is something you can technically make in that expansion as well. There are new dungeons. Conquer the 8 new dungeons that are in there with unique environments and storylines attached to them. You have Erator's Journey as testable. And of course, we have raid testing that's going to be kicking off the week of November 18th, with Wednesday being the first day where it opens up at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 11 p.m. Pacific, for people to get in there and test the Dream Rift raid. And then on Thursday, there's going to be Heroic going on with that. And then December 4th, so it's just the 19th and 20th, and then it's going to skip to December 4th and 5th. December 4th and 5th, you have Mythic Dream Rift testing happening for a few of the bosses in there, as well as, same thing on the 5th, Mythic testing for that. There's also going to be Void Spire normal testing taking place at, what would that be? That would be 6 o'clock Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific on the 5th of December, so later on that day. And that's going to run actually until the 8th. So it'll be 3 days of Void Spire being open on normal difficulty for people to test. So they're getting 2 of these raids as things out there that you can hop in and check to see what the content's like for you. And that's going to be happening starting the week of November 18th and obviously wrapping up on the 8th of December. So that's coming up soon too. That's literally next Wednesday is when you kick off raid testing. So we're going to start hearing from a lot of the player base what they feel these fights look like and feel like with a lot of the add-on changes that have come in, and what that no add-on package feels like for people who are doing these bosses. So I'm sure we're about to get a large media storm around people talking about it, and I'm kind of excited to hear what people have to say.
Yeah, this is the big test, right? This is the first big test for these changes, the combat changes, the kind of streamlined combat philosophy, the restricted API calls for add-ons, and just making add-ons more of a customizing information thing, not a calculation thing. Yeah, Wednesday, November 19th, circle it on your calendar. It's going to be a big day. We're going to get a lot of hot takes coming out of the beginning of this heroic raid testing. Because, I mean, we're going to get into this more later, but like, this is where it all actually starts to matter, right? And obviously raid testing can be janky. It's not necessarily representative of the final product. You never know if there might be some game-breaking bug that means a boss doesn't really even get tested. These things happen, and I wouldn't read too much into that. Like, what they're doing isn't going to work. That might just happen. It happens every time they do raid testing, but it will be really interesting to see what kind of impressions people who are doing this get from the overall, I would say, pretty sweeping changes to what we think of as endgame combat in WoW right now. I'm glad that we're getting this started right now. It's cool that also I guess we get a week in between for the holiday, but then we'll have like a full normal weekend. So that's a good opportunity for people to get in and check it out and do some kind of really low stakes testing. And, it'll just be there. It'll be sitting there, for that whole weekend, Friday through Monday. So I don't know if I will be doing that. I would love to kind of be able to do that, but I don't think it's going to be happening for me. But it's a really good opportunity to just get a feel for like, we could have blogs, we can have YouTube videos, we can have all these different interviews, all this different press. What does it feel like to play, right? And we don't know the answer to that question right now. And this will start answering that question.
Also available right now in beta, the new world bosses are going to unlock once you've completed the Midnight Campaign and unlock world quests. So that'll be available. New delves for you to check out. The prey system's online. The Argentina is there for you to check out stories and quests and whatnot attached with that. So there's a ton of stuff in there, including like PvP updates are in there. The profession updates with new recipes are in there. The stat squish is happening in beta, so that's available for testing as well. A lot of the combat tuning for different classes are in there as well. I know that there's some warrior tuning that took place here, Jason. I don't know if you want to highlight some of that.
Yeah, listen, I don't want to turn the whole show into warrior talk, but when there's something that I'm kind of interested in, I like to bring it up. There's a cool change for Thunderclap. They're changing their sort of some, we're changing stuff with targets and whatever, but one thing that's nice is Thunderclap now applies rend to all targets if you know rend. So that's where I think there used to be a separate talent where you had to choose that would make rend. You'd have to take rend, and then you have to take the talent to make Thunderclap apply rend to your targets. Rend is a bleed.
I think it was you'd rend a target and then Thunderclap, and it would spread the rend.
That was a long time ago. Yeah. Luckily, they got rid of it. That was the old school Blood and Thunder, man.
Yep.
That was fun having to dedicate a button to rend, and then thankfully we don't have to do that anymore. But they had moved it to a 5 target cap, which is kind of brutal. Like Thunderclap is your big AoE, notice me threat generator, and being able to spread bleeds is a really good way to keep that threat ticking away. So taking the target cap off of the Blood and Thunderclap rend spread sounds great to me. Also, they made an update to the way the Apex talent is working, which seems interesting to me a bit. We talked about it a couple weeks ago because it was new in the implementation there. And I think it was related to crit. It was like your shield slam crits unleash a wave of force, which then deals damage and reduces the damage your enemies do to you. They have moved away from that, and now it's the current implementation is going to be that Thunderclap basically gives you a buff that makes your next shield slam hit your phalanx, your wave of force. And they also up the duration of the damage reduction to 8 seconds from 5 seconds. So I think it's pretty reasonable to assume like you could keep mega high uptime on this, because I'm pretty sure even at low haste I can probably get a Thunderclap into a shield slam about once every 8 seconds. It's a little unusual for Warrior to have this style where you have these buttons that go in order. Like you always hit this before you hit this. Like that's not always the play style we've been in lately. And a lot of times, like when you get into high gear, you're just trying to really machine gun shield slams or whatever. Right. So, this will be a little bit different because I think you're going to want to utilize this a lot. But I like the overall design moving to this from maybe more of a crit-based thing because it feels like I have a lot of control over this. Like I don't always need to Thunderclap before I shield slam, but as long as I can maintain that debuff on my targets, then I can, as long as I'm weaving it in, the design seems cool to me, and I like that it's not tied to like a random chance. It's like my play style is this. I do this, and then I get this result. So, listen, there's way too much stuff changing for me to have sort of a really locked in opinion or take on like what my spec is going to play like. But I kind of pick out these little tweaks and I'm like, oh, I like that. I like the direction they're going in with this, or I like this little addition they're giving us, or they're bringing this old concept back in a way that I've been missing in the kit. So I've been kind of happy with some of these changes we've seen come through.
It's really nice when you can actually get in there and test these sorts of things too. So beta has been super helpful for folks that are like, I don't know what my class is going to play like. And it's like, well, you can get in and test to see what your class is going to play like right now and give feedback and say, hey, I really like that they did this with this ability, or I really don't like that they did this. And sort of have it out with other people who have different opinions, but it's just important to be able to test it at all and actually put your stamp on it as far as that goes. Outside of that, we had the new login screen is available. If you download beta, you can see the new login screen for Midnight, which a lot of people are commenting on and enjoying as far as that goes. They also did some accessibility features where combat audio alerts have been added for reading your target's name and announcing when your target dies, when combat starts and when the combat ends. This is curious to me. Is this like AI voice trying to read a name, or like some sort of other voice trying to read a name? Because there's some names like mine, for example, for my character that can be read very wrong inside of any kind of PvP situation where, you know, my character's name is Triage, but it's spelled Treeahje. So I've heard Triage and triage and all sorts of really weird pronunciations before. I'll be curious how the game thinks my name is supposed to be pronounced. So we'll see if they hit that okay or not. But that's a curious one to me. I am glad to see that accessibility stuff come in, though. It's always nice to see that. They also added a way to mark particular spellcasts and auras as non-secret. This will be used for various non-combat spells, for like profession spells and dragon riding spells, so add-ons can still access them. That's inside add-on stuff, which we're about to move into here shortly, as well as transmog is disabled for the week. So unfortunately, everyone will be ugly on beta. Keep that in mind. No one will be wearing really nice matching outfits. Everyone's going to wear whatever their gear currently looks like. So that is what I feel like there should be a micro holiday for the day where they turn off transmog, just for one day.
Oh man, that would be great.
It'd be a hilarious.
Do it on like April 1st. It's like big head mode sort of. But
basically, right?
Yeah, why not? I love it. Yeah, so people might be looking pretty Burning Crusade on the beta for this week.
Yeah. All right. Combat Philosophy and Addon Disarmament in Midnight. This is Ian Hazzikostas handwritten on a scroll with a feathered quill letter to the player base about combat philosophy and what's happening. Which makes sense.
That's why it took so long to get here.
It is
because he was handwriting it with a quill,
and then the pigeon
had to deliver it to a carrier pigeon.
That's right.
And so instead of getting it before alpha started, we get it now.
Exactly. All right. This is a lot. Here we go. As we move into the beta phase of Midnight testing and invite a much larger wave of players in to experience the expansion and provide feedback, I wanted to take time to recap the planned changes to add-on capabilities and the accompanying broader changes to combat and encounters. This will be a long post, but stick with me, there's a lot to cover. Over the course of the past year, we have been talking about add-on changes, but that communication has been spread across multiple videos, posts, interviews, and ongoing conversations with add-on authors. This fragmentation has contributed to confusion and concern across the community. The main goal of this article is to dispel as much of this confusion as possible and, hopefully, provide reassurance around these planned changes. To be clear, it is entirely natural for players who have spent countless hours experiencing Azeroth through the lens of their favorite add-ons to feel nervous about big changes to that ecosystem. While some players who use few or no add-ons may be shrugging their shoulders, for many others, this may be the single largest change an expansion has ever made to World of Warcraft. We take none of this lightly. Addon Disarmament. Why? So, if we know this is a risky change, why are we making it? For over 20 years, the customizability of World of Warcraft's user interface has been a pillar of the game, allowing players to use add-ons to tailor the look and feel of the game to suit their preferences. Numerous improvements to the base UI over the years has been inspired and informed by these community efforts. But the power we give to add-on authors has always come with the risk of tools that they can distort moment-to-moment gameplay, which has led the development team to restrict add-ons capabilities several times over the years. In past incidents, we typically were able to address issues by limiting add-ons access to some specific functionality. An example would be add-ons automatically selecting abilities and targets in the game's early days, or using players' position and clever math to build radar overlays over a decade later. Something like this that reminds me, this is outside of the letter, was decursive in its original form. Used to, like back in Molten Core, you could just click on a box and that box would target the player who had a debuff and then dispel that player. And you could just literally click boxes and it would do that for you without having to look at anyone else who's in the raid or actually press the button to cast the spell. So that was like ages ago, but that was decursive's original form back then. So yeah.
And the radar thing, I was actually talking about this with somebody who's a bit newer to WoW. Like they've started playing WoW since range radar went away. And we still say things in raid calls or whatever, like, oh, range 8 for this mechanic, right? Or whatever. And it's sort of a vestigial part of our vocabulary left over from when we literally had like radar in DBM. One thing I want to point out is like we lost range radar, right? Like an add-on can no longer show you your position relative to other players inside an instance. But what did they start doing? If you have a thing that forces you to spread out 8 yards, it puts an 8-yard ring around you. How novel, right? Like so I think that might be an example of where we want this to go as players. It's like, okay, if you're going to restrict add-ons ability to solve problems, then give us visual or some kind of other data to go, okay, this is what I need to react to. This is the position where I'm safe. Like this is as far out as I need to be, or this is as close as I need to be to a thing or whatever. Like we've seen micro examples of changes like this in the past. So, that's sort of maybe frames like where they want to go.
Yeah, it might. I think that there was a anecdote there that I wanted to add in, which is how range radars initially worked for a lot of those add-ons was based off of you having bandages in your inventory, because it would judge what 5 yards was based off of a bandage and how close you were to be able to bandage another player. So if you weren't carrying bandages in your inventory, then none of the range radar worked, because it would literally use that item. And if you didn't have that item, then you couldn't actually have range radar work, which was hilarious to me when we discovered that back in the day. But yes, anyways, little anecdote there. But yeah, we'll be curious as to where this goes. But anyways, let's go back to the article. All right. This time around, however, the cause for concern is subtler and more pervasive. Over the past few expansions, the community has increasingly shifted from a focus on add-ons that display information in a particular way to add-ons that process that information to drive combat decisions and recommendations. As an RPG with cast times and cooldowns governing most actions, a huge portion of skill in World of Warcraft has always rested in the moment-to-moment decision-making. By its nature, a computer with access to complete information about the current state of the current state in World of Warcraft's both allies and enemies, buffs and debuffs, active cast times, cooldown state, health, and more, will be able to make the correct decision far faster than any human, and can do so with unerring accuracy. So it's just like it just does it perfectly. Such add-ons move beyond the realm of personal preference, offering an objective advantage in moment-to-moment combat. As a result, players often will be told to download specific add-ons to improve their class performance or to defeat a specific encounter. Guilds or even pickup groups commonly require the use of specific add-ons for mid-combat coordination. While we have never designed for add-ons in the sense of making specific encounters or class mechanics with the intent that players would write add-ons to solve given puzzles, we have inevitably had to design around them for several of the past expansions. We have to accept that even in non-cutting edge content, a majority of players will turn to any available tools to make things easier. For example, when we design a boss in normal or heroic raid, we have a tuning target in mind. While we risk causing frustration if we overshoot the mark, when we release an encounter that puts up very little resistance, we often get feedback that the boss was unsatisfying. In a similar vein, when we're designing a class mechanic, we're trying to express class fantasy while also offering engaging moment-to-moment gameplay. But with add-ons instantly solving a raid coordination challenge or collapsing a nuanced combat decision into a simple binary, we would get feedback supported by data then our design felt flat. And so we would add an extra layer of complexity to a class mechanic, or tighten an encounter's tuning to give players less time to react in order to deliver a level of challenge and engagement that players are expecting. But that shift has left people who prefer not to use add-ons at a clear disadvantage, making World of Warcraft less approachable in the process. And so we're looking to level the playing field. The guiding philosophy for our approach is straightforward. Add-ons should no longer offer a competitive advantage in World of Warcraft combat. They should remain as robust tools for aesthetic customization and personalized presentation of information, but they should not be able to make a player more likely to succeed in combat against an encounter for another player. I've seen discussion around the word competitive, with some understandably noting that they aren't playing in the MDI or trying to get into Hall of Fame or arena leaderboards, and wondering why a design shift about competitive advantage should apply to them. But the consequences of add-ons impact creep into all facets of the game, and this uneven playing field is experienced by all players, whether someone is trying to defeat Dimensius on normal with their friends and family guild, or trying to get a foothold in Mythic Plus, or trying to be the best of the best. Okay, let's recap this a little bit, because we then move into the what's changing part of that. I mean, overall, I definitely think he's speaking about the challenges the devs, I guess, have to go through and face on a regular basis of, hey, look, we're not designing any encounter for add-ons. We're not going, hey, here's a really tricky puzzle that if you're just using base UI, you can't solve. You're going to have someone come up with some sort of weak aura or whatever it is to be able to accomplish this fight. They're not doing that, but inevitably they are trying to design around the fact that a weak aura could just present you with the instant solve, because the computer brain of weak aura is going to be able to solve this math problem / design problem / challenge faster than any human can, which means that you just get the weak aura and everyone has to have the weak aura, which then becomes the problem you run into with any kind of guild or pug run where they require particular weak auras to be able to actually accomplish, or just add-ons in general, to be able to accomplish that encounter in the easiest way possible, and not using them just becomes the wrong decision, which is not something you're looking for at all. So I also like that he highlights in this, and you can speak a little bit to this, Jason, the player base that doesn't use add-ons and barely does it at all, but is now going to be impacted by that. Like, maybe you're just an ElvUI user and you just love using ElvUI and how it makes your UI look, and haven't really been taking advantage of any of the more raid specific or Mythic Plus specific features of it. But now that add-on is being largely impacted, and the development team is struggling with that based off of these changes that are coming. So you're being impacted by these changes, even though you don't participate in the quote-unquote competitive scene when it comes to this sort of stuff.
Yeah, and I think also the expectation of, like, okay, well, in order to get to this specific rank of progress, in order to kill this boss, you need to use these specific add-ons. I mean, the amount of resistance that my team had to even like working on sticks in Mythic Liberation of Undermine, because it was very hard to coordinate that without a suite of weak aura tools in order to do so. I think, and this is where sort of we also the thing about, I like to use ElvUI or something for UI replacement, but I don't use it for combat add-on stuff. But so now my UI isn't going to work, and I'm going to have to rebuild it. This sort of gets into the thing about the scorched earth approach they kind of took when beta or alpha started, and everything just stopped working. And I think that might be an ongoing challenge in this case. I mean, he makes the point that they've never designed for add-ons, which he defines as the sense of making a specific encounter or class mechanic with the intent the players would write add-ons to solve a given puzzle. But you made the Dreadlords encounter in Sepulchre, right? Yeah. Like, how did you expect players were going to solve that? What we talked about it so much, like when that was live in the game, like you could go back and listen to those episodes from spring of 21 or whenever that was. It's like, or 22 maybe, I don't know, but like, yeah, like what we have no window of time to do this with the information that's on the screen, right? Like, I can't imagine what they thought players were going to do and what the approach was going to be. So some of this I do think is a little bit, I think some of it's a little revisionist in some ways based on my experience as a player, but I do think he frames the problem well, right? Like this is the tension that has existed for a long time, going all the way back to, the examples that he gives about radar and stuff like that. Like, but it's just gotten so much more sophisticated over the years as add-on authors get better at what they're doing. And, I mean, the add-ons are so much more robust in War Within than they were, years ago. And so it's kind of an accelerating process. Take a boss like Fractilis, for example. This is the example that I immediately thought of in my head when I was reading this section of the post, because at least on heroic and lower, Fractilis is not a difficult boss by any real measure. And when we started working on this tier, my team, like we didn't use add-ons. I didn't have real specific assignments for anybody. It was like, okay, here's our safe lane. Hang out here, spread out, spread the walls out. Look at the arrows. You want one arrow in each of these 4 lanes. Okay, make sure we break. If you get the backhand, get in front of wherever there's a bunch of walls and break them. And then once we started dipping into, we're going to start up Mythic Prog, it's like, all right, well, let's get add-on packs, let's get weak aura packs and everything. And then it's like, well, when we're doing heroic clears, let's just use the Fractilis weak auras, because then nobody has to think about anything at all. And so like the add-on will just perfectly guide you through that fight. If everybody is using it and everybody follows it, nobody's thinking about anything. And what was already an easy fight, but maybe had some shot calling and stuff, turns into, well, you're just playing the weak aura. You just play the add-on and then you win the fight. And I understand why they don't want players to have that experience. I understand why they don't want to design fights like that, or where there's an opportunity for an add-on to provide that kind of experience. And so, you end up in a world where you have to start clawing back what add-ons are able to do. I think I don't know what other conclusion I can come to from the outside, right? Like, if you let an add-on do this, and then it is stripping out the core element of a raid boss or something, right? Like the actual gameplay that you're trying to present to players, what options do you have other than restricting what the add-on can do? I mean, we already know that they've designed many fights. I mean, he alludes to it. Like, they know that players have these tools and that these tools are going to continue to become more robust over time. So they have to keep that in mind when they design the encounters. And that's how we ended up in this kind of, I mean, obviously it's a state of encounter design that they feel is unhealthy or unsatisfying. And so, what kind of tools do they have? I think that sort of, it does sort of beg that question. I really, like, anybody who listens to the show for a long time, I like to run add-on lean. I would prefer not to have to require my raiders to have a big stack of, weak aura packs in order to do the raid. But I've been fighting an inevitable tide over the last few years. You just get to the point where, why are we doing, we're doing this wrong at this point, I think is what it comes down to. We are taking a path of too much resistance. Other players are having better experiences because they are requiring their teams to use this specific set of add-ons. They're using this raid plan. They're doing this strat. It doesn't matter if you can do it some other way, or if you have some other type of approach you'd like to take, you're doing it wrong. And I do think that's a good thing to take out of the game on its face. Like, I'm on board with that.
Yeah, I do think overall these are very healthy decisions that are being made for the game and its state. It's just, and again, this is the thing, I don't think anyone would argue that they're healthy decisions. I think they'd argue the way about how they're going about them, and how quickly they're doing it, and how much they're ripping the Band-Aid off, and how much they don't have something in place to replace it, is the concerns where players are coming from in this. So let's continue going here, because they go, Addon Disarmament, what's changing is the next part of this letter. In pursuing these philosophical goals, we have tried to make a surgical approach to limit add-ons' ability to process information with the least possible impact on their ability to display it. Our engineering team has been regularly sharing updates to the API, short for Application Programming Interface, essentially the functions that add-on authors can use to access and manipulate WoW's UI data with add-on authors. So they're been sharing it with add-on authors. But a simplified explanation of what we're changing is as follows. The information about the current combat state is designed as a secret value that can be displayed by add-ons but not known by them. In essence, combat events are in a black box. Add-ons can change the size or shape of the box, and they can paint it a different color, but what they can't do is look inside the box. So in Midnight, add-ons can still change the location of your buffs or debuffs or the size and shape of the associated frames. They can change the size and shape and texture of enemy nameplates and cast bars and many similar UI elements. But they can't know with certainty whether you or your target have a specific debuff currently active or what the cooldown of a given ability is. I'm going to pause for a second because I think that's a great way of describing in a short form. I don't know how long it took them to actually put it this way, but it's a really, really clever way of putting together what their objective is going forward with add-ons in this situation.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little confusing, I guess. I when he says they can't know with certainty whether you or your target have a specific debuff currently active, I guess that means basically for like tracking purposes or something. Like, in other words, it's not hooked into duration information or something. Like it can receive the information that the buff is there, right? They must want you to be able to do that, because in the sentence before he says add-ons can still change the location of your buffs or debuffs or the size and shape of associated frames and enemy nameplates and cast bars and many other similar elements. So when he says they can't, he puts no in quotation marks. So I'm not exactly sure like how that affects, what add-ons can do when he says they can't know with certainty whether you have a specific debuff currently active or what the cooldown of ability is, even though it can track a bunch of this stuff.
I think I know exactly what he's saying when he says that. It's interesting that so for me, what he's saying is it won't know if you have Hunter's Mark on you or not. It won't know if you have whatever it is on you, but where the Hunter's Mark icon sits on your screen, you can move around. What that icon might be displayed as, or the timer, the remaining duration is displayed as, you can change. And you can have that be what you want it to be. But the add-on won't be able to go, you have Hunter's Mark, that means you should dispel this or move here or line of sight or whatever it is. Like it won't be able to tell what is inside of the box. It'll be able to change the way it's presented to you and the cooldown and the position and everything else, but it won't know what exactly is in the box. It's like saying, okay, you have the quote-unquote debuff box, and that box can be the size it needs to be to fit all of the things inside of it, but no add-on will be able to look into the box and tell you what debuffs you currently have and how to react to those debuffs. So it's obviously World of Warcraft's base UI will be able to, because they've already put in icons of poison and curse and all that kind of stuff. We can see that their base UI frames will have that knowledge, but you won't be able to have a weak aura that tells you when someone has cast Psychic Scream and one of your enemies is feared to specifically dispel that person immediately. That weak aura or whatever, is doing that information for you will have to be looking at the person's frame to see whether or not that frame is flagged a certain way, I assume, to give you any kind of information. I don't know if we'll be able to do that necessarily, but the important thing to me is what he's getting across is your add-ons will be able to customize anything to make anything look or move or be shaped or whatever it is the way you want. It just won't be able to identify what's happening to your character and give you a recommendation or trigger something off of a specific thing that's happening to your character, which I think is good. I think that's a healthy way to move, because it moves away from being guided by add-ons and more into, hey, the information's presented to you in a different way, which I think is a healthy way to go. So
right, yeah, it's hard to think about, I guess, right, and that might be part of the reason why it's been confusing and frustrating for a lot of players on the outside of the process right now. Because it's like, well, without knowing how an add-on, I don't know how to develop an add-on. I just know how to use it, right? So, that might be, I think that might be contributing to it. I think where they want to go sounds fine to me. I know like there's things that I like to be able to track in the UI that I've used weak auras for or whatever, but I'm looking basically for some kind of information that I want to keep an eye on and that I want in a specific space, to catch my eye or whatever. And it seems like they're okay with add-ons continuing to be able to do that kind of stuff. So that's good. I do think, this also, maybe this sort of, it's reasonable to assume that this means that if an add-on like knows something, it can communicate with other players or like other instances of the add-on that other players have, which then results in kind of the specific stuff they're trying to get away from. This state means that you should take this action and we'll communicate this to other players, right?
Well, a good example of this is a dispel list, right? So let's just say 5 people in your raid get a debuff. We know that mechanically that debuff for this fight needs to be one person is dispelled, and then you wait 2 seconds and you dispel the next person, and you wait 2 seconds and you dispel the next person. That what used to happen is you'd get a big pop-up on your screen, or there'd be like a table, or people would have a number over their frames, or whatever it is, of who gets dispelled when, and you'd have like a spiral that would count down when it was safe to dispel the next person, whatever that is, right? That used to be what would happen. Now, you would just see on your raid frames that 5 people got this debuff. And no add-on would be able to go, okay, I'm forming a list of which order we should do this in. It's now a player problem to solve. And Blizzard's onus on this would be to give people enough time to be able to create an order and do that. And that might be, okay, we're going to have 2 dispellers. You're going to dispel first, you're going to dispel second, and you're just going to alternate back and forth between the 2 of you. And because there's an internal cooldown on this, basically the second person dispel just has to count to 2, and then we're just good. Both of you can go back and forth, as far as what those dispels do, and be fine solving this mechanic. But what you won't have is an add-on that looks at who got debuffs, creates a list for you, and puts up UI elements telling you when they should be dispelled and when it's safe to and whatnot. Right? That won't be happening. I think that's a healthy way to sort of go about this sort of thing. So I can appreciate the direction, at least. It's just whether or not the fights are going to be designed well and the UI elements are going to work properly and all the other stuff comes together. But we'll move into that later on once we get raid testing happening. All right. We debuted our alpha test with the strictest version of this rule set, wanting to avoid frustrating cat and mouse situations with add-on authors, pointing out loopholes in our logic and us needing to keep tightening things down to preserve a level playing field. Whereas we have historically disabled all add-ons in early weeks of expansion alpha testing, this time we invited numerous add-on developers to our first wave of the test. We wanted to give them a head start on updating their add-ons and hear their early feedback on pain points. The input has been invaluable so far and led us to loosen restrictions in numerous areas that were causing needless collateral damage. Even with this more focused approach, we knew that limiting add-ons' ability to parse combat events in real time would have a significant impact on the wide range of popular and benign add-ons, such as damage meters that offer immediate insight into performance, boss ability timers that have been part of the rating since the very earliest days of World of Warcraft, and tools that make the game accessible to players with a range of disabilities. So, alongside the Secret Values project, our team has also been working on building up native solutions in many of those areas, as well as creating new API hooks to allow add-on authors to access protected information in ways that don't risk competitive integrity. We have been rolling out base UI features over the course of the year, and that will continue during Midnight Beta. The Legacy of Aerothor content update in 11.1.7 introduced the assisted highlight and one-button rotation tools to help players learn new specializations and improved overall accessibility. We implemented an early version of the cooldown manager in 11.1.5 content update, knowing that it needed a lot of iteration, but wanting to ensure that we were getting all the needed feedback in a live environment. Midnight will feature a much refined version of this. Midnight includes a new boss warning system, which allows players to see which boss mechanics are upcoming, while leaving the choice of how to handle them in players' hands. We are in the process of adding a range of native accessibility improvements, such as built-in combat audio alert system that allows players to use text-to-speech and other audio cues for everything from player health to common combat events. Over the course of beta, we will be releasing improvements to our raid frames for healers, a built-in damage meter tool with server-side validation, and more. While we're working on limiting the ability of add-ons to give high-end performance advantage, we want to ensure that the baseline WoW experience is as approachable and accessible as ever. We know that if we are limiting add-ons functionality, we need to give all players the information they need to succeed. We need to tune our game accordingly, along with much clearer visual and audio telegraphs that may also mean having an extra second or two to react to a mechanic or a few things occurring simultaneously to keep the cognitive load manageable. Our end goal is for any piece of content in Midnight, a Mythic 10 dungeon, a normal difficulty raid boss, a tier 8 delve, whatever, to be roughly as challenging as it was in prior expansions, but for that challenge to be more fairly distributed across the player base. So, man, I love that he used cognitive load, because it's something that's just been coming up so often of how much brain RAM people have to process things lately, that the cognitive load is something that's been very present in a lot of this. But, I mean, I think this lays out good intentions as far as what they're hoping to do and hoping to accomplish, and does highlight the steps they've taken so far. Again, I just, what hangs over this for me, Jason, is still the same thing of we have to wait and see if this is what they're delivering, because they need to still deliver it, and it has to still work.
Well, yeah, that's sort of the looming specter right now, and maybe we'll feel differently about it in a couple of weeks once, or I guess next week when some raid testing starts up. I guess like it would have been great to have this stuff out there much earlier in the process than this week. I think it was just yesterday this came out. I do think, it would have, we saw it unfold, right? We saw it happening when the initial alpha build was super locked down. All kinds of add-ons that you wouldn't even expect to be affected by this weren't working. And they've been slowly loosening the screws a little bit. Every single build, there's been changes. I guess like they can't really come out and say that that's what they're doing, like at the time that it happens, but it would have been nice if they were. Yeah,
we said that. I just want to point that out. We said that when they came out with the super tight restrictions, we went, this is what they're doing. They're tightening everything up as much as they can, and they're just going to slowly loosen it up as they go. That's how our perception was of this. But they didn't say that.
Like I get why they couldn't say it in advance, because it's a little weird, but maybe they could have said something along the lines of, we know that API restrictions are extremely tight right now, and this is an ongoing process. Like they didn't really acknowledge that at the beginning of the process.
Yeah.
So I think it's good to acknowledge it at this point, because it's obviously that's what happened. I think pointing out he points out a bunch of the stuff they've done already, and it's like, well, cooldown manager's a lot better now than it was, and it will be better in Midnight, but it's still not exactly what everybody would really love. I think it's actually pretty good. Like for my purposes, I've been using it. I turned off most of my weak auras, and I'm trying to just get used to it. And I think it's pretty good. And they added some stuff that I never would have had an add-on do, but because it's easy to do in the baseline UI and set it up, now I'm using stuff that maybe I wouldn't have before. So that's a weird side effect for a player like me. But a lot of the stuff is like, hey, we've done this, or we're doing this in a test build that you can't play right now in any way that matters. Right? Like, it's great. We'll see. It's a wait and see. I think it's great to have built-in damage meters that are server-side validated. Why didn't we have that a long time ago? Damage meters are one of the first things that anybody would have told you to install as an add-on in WoW in 2005, right, or whatever. Like, these are things that it's not like the WoW team has been averse to presenting you with this information. It's just they expect you to get it somewhere else, and that's always been weird. But again, it's not like in any kind of usable state to the player right now. He's just saying, "Oh, we're doing this." Well, you got to deliver one, and it's got to be better than details. Otherwise, why did you do this? Right? It's that kind of push and pull. I think. Like obviously, they have a lot of stuff on the radar that is the way players play the game, the way players engage with the game. These things need to get baked into the game baseline. And so the approaches they're taking where they don't want add-ons looking inside the box. I mean, I think it seems like it's doable enough for many of these situations. I don't, but again, I'm not an add-on author. I've never written an add-on. I don't even use that many of them, so I don't know how hard once the approach is actually realized, right? There's still a lot of stuff changing. So once it's more realized, like, is it going to be acceptable for a lot of add-on authors? I don't know, but it's funny because I do feel like this post should have been out sooner, but also this section of the post is more promises about stuff that's going to be coming, or this thing that you have in the game now, it's going to get a lot better. Like, it's not quite there yet, and it's not something players have experienced. So it's interesting. I mean, I think the overall end state, the last bullet of this section is this. It's good to hear. This is the game that I want to play. So I want them to get to this state. Like, I want that extra second or two to react to mechanics because I don't have an add-on pointing 20 people in the correct direction. I want manageable cognitive load in raid encounters. That's part of that's part of the arms race thing, right? Like, add-ons get better, so then they throw more stuff at the add-on, and then the add-on solving more stuff, and it just keeps escalating. I don't want that. I want mechanics that are, manageable, that we can do shot calling and call outs and we can solve on the fly, or have some kind of assignment rotation that people know going in and then we can execute it. I think overall, the difficulty of any given piece of content being roughly as challenging as prior going forward is a decent goal. I think most of the difficulty of the game is in a fair state. We talked last week about, sort of that gap between heroic and into mythic, and how the top end of mythic still requires like hundreds of pulls per boss and is off-putting to a lot of players, and you're making a lot of content that most of your players never see. That's maybe a separate conversation. I do suspect that if you make the in-game UI and what the information the game presents to the player more robust and more customizable without relying on these external things, and you have a game where players can solve the problems that a raid encounter presents in a more cooperative and organic way versus relying on add-ons and people understanding what the add-on calls mean and what they're supposed to be doing, you might have the side effect of the difficulty of the game coming down slightly because you're presenting what I would consider to be more fair challenges, right? If you don't require, I'm using require loosely here, I guess, but like, if you don't require add-ons for a raid mechanic, then you don't have this barrier to get over. You don't have this potential for misunderstanding what an add-on's communicating. You give a team more opportunity to express their skill in overcoming it. It may result in maybe, just maybe a slightly lower overall difficulty curve, or things feeling at least more approachable than how do I navigate the add-ons that I need in order to execute this strat. And we have to make these snap decisions based on the information that we're getting. So, I think overall the difficulty of the game is in a fine place, but when he says more fairly distributed across the player base, I think that's an interesting way to put it, because it's like, the distribution means, if you are taking advantage of all the tools available and you're using them well, then you are mitigating some of that challenge in a way that a player who is not doing. But then that also means that player doesn't have access to maybe some of the higher end content because they're not leveraging add-ons appropriately for, the 11.x version of the game.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's an interesting thing to see what a lot of this plays out as. What I'm hopeful for is, and this could be a result of a lot of these changes, is that we see fewer 12 or 15 minute encounters. We see fewer situations where players are required to spend 300 pulls learning a dance of a boss so that they can execute the dance perfectly, because it's that complex of a dance to be able to actually accomplish this boss. And that, even in those, in a lot of those situations where there's 13 minute or 15 minute encounters in World of Warcraft, we've used add-ons to be able to essentially remind ourselves, oh, right, this is when I do this step of the dance, and this is when I do that step of the dance, and this is, oh, I was targeted by this thing, so I need to do this totally different thing this one time that might not happen again for another 50 or 60 pulls. And that every time every player is targeted by that thing, that player has to do that other thing correctly, even though they might not see it again for another 50 or 60 pulls. Like, a really those sorts of niche situations are more prevalent in longer fights. And so if you trim your fight time down to a 6 to 8 minute kind of range, you just deal with encounters where players have an easier time learning a 6 to 8 minute dance versus a 12 to 15 minute dance. I don't know. I've never enjoyed really long WoW encounters ever. I've never enjoyed them. There's never been one where I was like, oh yeah, Sylvanas, man, that was a great fight, being in there for 15 minutes and then dying in the last 20 seconds before the boss dies and having to start up 15 minutes again. Like, that was great. No, it was always a slog and a drain and frustrating. Same thing with Jailer. It's something where I enjoy those 6 to 8 minute fights because I feel like there's something that you can parse and learn, and they talk about cognitive load in that period of time much better and much easier. Painsmith was a painful fight to get through, but its dance was there and was prevalent, and you could learn it, and it was a 6.5 minute fight, and that's just what it was. And I think it's a great example of an encounter where it's like, yeah, there's very few things in there you had to rely on add-ons for. A lot of that fight was just learning the encounter and being able to do the dance properly through that encounter. And I want to see more of those situations and fewer of the Sylvanas kind of situations where it's this huge, long drag. It doesn't become more epic for me. It becomes more arduous for me. Something I want to spend less time doing when you're doing something like that. The Anduin fight is something I would have wanted to spend less time on, not more time on in that encounter. So yeah, I'm curious as to what this balancing is going to feel like, and I think raid testing will really speak to a lot of that, and hopefully, some of their motif going forward. But I am hoping we don't see like a 20-minute Harnir boss or something wild like that, because it's not what I'm looking for at all. I don't want another Garrosh Hellscream where you literally have a 30 or 40 second break in the middle of it for people to like stand up and stretch and do whatever so they can do the other half of the fight. Like, that's not what I'm looking for when it comes to this stuff. Okay, continuing on with this.
Well, it's like that state of hypervigilance you have to be in during a raid fight, right? Like, especially if you're progging or whatever, then that's where the fight length really becomes
a problem.
That shouldn't be like a part of the challenge of a fight, right? Is like paying attention throughout the entire encounter, which I feel like 6 to 8 minutes is reasonable. Once you start getting above that, it can be really taxing, and especially when you're doing a fight where you're going to wipe a bunch and you got to keep doing it. I think there's like a sweet spot of players' attention span you can devote to a boss encounter. And yeah, I think 12 to 13 minutes vastly exceeds that.
Yes, I agree. All right, next chunk of this. Why are some cosmetic add-ons breaking? I'd like to take a moment to address the technical nuances here. Many players have expressed confusion at seeing reports of some popular cosmetic add-ons no longer functioning as expected in Midnight. If we are only focusing on combat calculations, why are we seemingly breaking an add-on that only changes the appearance of player or target frames? That is never our intent. But there are a few reasons why that might be the case currently in Midnight test builds. The myriad of authors who have created add-ons for World of Warcraft over the years have each chosen from among countless different approaches to structuring their code. As a result, two add-ons that provide nearly identical player-facing functionality might be quite dissimilar under the hood, and thus be affected very differently by the changes coming in Midnight. Some add-ons can and will work just fine in Midnight, but they have yet to be updated by their author. The work that they need to do may be very straightforward or may take a significant amount of time. Every expansion in WoW's history has required tweaks to all but the simplest of add-ons. Thus, the out-of-date add-ons pop up with each major patch update. Other add-ons, however, rely on implementation that don't merely reskin pieces of the WoW UI, but rather rebuild them from scratch, using raw data about the current combat state. Unfortunately, that particular approach, which by no means is inherently wrong, has limitations under the new secret value system. While there are some areas where we cannot bypass these limitations without opening the door to computational logic, we are trying to do everything possible to minimize collateral damage. For example, recognizing that many players enjoy abstract and custom ways of representing their current count of runes on a Death Knight, or holy power on a paladin. we recently made all class secondary resources fully non-secret. We are committed to continuing to work with add-on developers and with the community at large to provide support for robust customizations with this new framework. Okay. I mean, I think this is pretty straightforward, that they're basically saying, hey, when people put together add-ons, depending on how they put it together, it might be relying on pulling something that's locked, even though they could have gone about it a different way with something that's unlocked. And so you might have two similar add-ons that do the same function, but hey, unfortunately, add-on author A went about it a way that pulls from combat data, and add-on author B didn't. And so add-on author A might have to rebuild a lot of code, whereas B just had to tweak some minor things, and there's nothing really going on with that. So yeah, I think that explains a lot of what we're seeing with some of these add-ons, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, they have no control over how people construct an add-on, right? Like, and so then when the rules change around what an add-on can do, then it can have different effects depending on how it's constructed. That, as somebody who, again, is not an add-on author, that makes sense to me, where it's like, you know, as alpha was spinning up and you see these reports and of like, okay, this works, this doesn't work, or like this feels like it should work, but it doesn't. Why not? They said that they would let this work, but yeah, it depends on how it's built in some cases. I do like the mention of tracking resources, right? Player resources. Yes. And that, to me, that does feel like something that should be fully non-secret. You know, I like a nice, clean little rage tracker, and I've been using WeakR as, like, there really isn't any great way to do this in the baseline game as of right now. So what I have traditionally done is I literally have a WeakR that just outputs my current rage total to a numerical value, and then I just drag that over my personal resource display because that's where I want to see it. And it's like, okay, now I know how much rage I have, and I push my buttons when I have certain rage thresholds. Like,
right.
That's a thing that was restricted up until quite recently, and I think we are going to see some solutions for add-ons to handle those types of resource bars or other ways of displaying it, which is awesome. I mean, he gives the example of runes and holy power, which is a whole other thing. I mean, you've seen a lot more like graphical representations of stuff like that, you know, which is cool, and players are really used to it as well, which is a big part of the puzzle. For rage, it's just a number, so it's not that big of a deal. I don't really need a graphical representation of my rage, but this is a perfect example of a thing that they should let you do, right? This is within the bounds of your stated philosophy. I just want to present the information in a different way. How much rage does my character have? Tell me that in a thing, and let me put it somewhere.
Yeah, I think what they don't want to have happen is have an add-on able to read how much rage you have, and then have a pop-up on your screen that says, press shield wall now, press this now, press that
right,
now.
It's time to do this thing because you've hit this threshold.
Exactly.
Right? And I can see that distinction for sure.
Yeah. All right, Addon Disarmament. Why now? Well, another common question I've heard is, why do this now? Why not wait until after our built-in functionality is fully polished and has multiple rounds of feedback? When I first started talking about our concerns with the impact of add-ons on the modern game nearly a year ago, we were still evaluating the feasibility of a solution, as well as what the right time frame for that would be. But we also wanted to gauge community sentiment around the general issue. WoW's history is littered with examples of the dev team trying to solve perceived problems that most players were particularly concerned about, and we wanted to reassure ourselves that we weren't headed down the same path here. We were happy to see a lot of positive reactions to the discussion. I'm not going to pretend that there was unanimous support, but the average take was something along the lines of, it would be great if add-ons weren't required, but I'm not sure I trust Blizzard to pull this off. And that's very fair. This is a huge and challenging project, and I don't expect blind faith in absence of results. Convinced that we were on the right track with the aims of the project, we shifted to building a roadmap of what it would take to pull off this transformation. The team found that progress on the UI engineering front was moving faster than expected, both in terms of secret value system and in terms of implementing some of the replacements we knew we'd need. That made readiness for the launch of Midnight a real possibility. These changes pretty much have to be made on an expansion boundary, allowing us to build a full slate of content and systems that are meant for a post-add-on disarmament world. trying to ask players to relearn content mid-expansion without the tools they were using the day before would be a sure recipe for unhappiness. And no matter how much we improve our native UI, we can't build mechanics that are trivially solvable by add-ons and expect that players won't use those tools so long as they still function. In the end, we were faced with the decision of either signing up for a couple more years of designing our content around powerful add-ons in ways that make it impossible for us to serve our whole community, or moving forward now and finding solutions with this new paradigm. And so Addon Disarmament is coming in midnight. The team is fully committed to giving the community all the support required, tweaking the logic around what is restricted, and making new access points available to add-on developers in order to make this transition successful. I mean, this is basically my opinion on why they were doing it now. Like, this is what I was saying a while back, of if you designed content around not needing add-ons, but then still had add-ons in the game, that content is then trivialized, which is why I also made the comment of, you can't pull the ripcord now on this decision because they've already designed the content around there not being add-ons, which means that add-ons would then just trivialize whatever content's there if they chose to back out of this decision. They are committed to this path because the game content that we're going to be playing is now designed around this decision of what's happening with Addon Disarmament. So I mean, this is what I felt they were doing and why they were doing it, and it makes sense to me as to why they're doing it now. I guess in the sense that, like, would I have liked this expansion to be pushed back by 2 months? Sure, I'd totally accept if they pushed Midnight's launch back by 2 months and gave them more time to make cooldown manager and other things better overall and done all of those things. That wouldn't have bothered me, but it might have bothered a lot of the player base, and it might have messed with the devs' release schedule and all the marketing stuff they're doing and everything else, so that it didn't work out the way they wanted it to work out. But, you know, I would have been comfortable with that personally. However, this is the situation we're in. They want it for midnight launch. Midnight launch is a set date that they're trying to hit, and so they have to push forward with what they have.
Yeah, why now, I think, is a question that I have asked many times to no one in particular on the show here as well. I guess it's good to hear that they feel like they're ahead of schedule as far as the engineering and everything, and that's, you know, that's why it's feasible to do it now. That's what you want to hear, right? You don't want to hear, well, we're pretty sure that, like, this is going to be okay. Our engineers will figure it out. Like, you know, part of this. Yeah, part of this post is saying, like, hey, we're actually in a good state on the back end with the game of this to do it. I mean, I 100% agree with his take that, like, it needs to happen with an expansion.
Absolutely.
It can't be a middle patch thing. I mean, that would be a disaster, I think. Just from a PR standpoint, from a player sentiment standpoint, even if it worked great, it would be so confusing.
It might kill an expansion. It might literally drive enough of the player base to be like, screw this, I'll come back when they do something new, that it actually kills an expansion. Yeah.
That would just be that's way too disruptive once players are off and running. So, I mean, yeah, you know, my overarching feeling about this is that all that matters is how the game feels to play, to me. And I think if the game is fun to play, then for a lot of players, you know, the particulars are not going to be important here. It's just going to be, am I getting what I want out of the experience when I sit down and log into the game and play it for the night? Right. You know, and yeah, we don't know. I mean, I'm glad that they are moving the design in this direction, and that the game is purposely, like, the content is being shaped around these decisions, and that should make it. I mean, hopefully that means that they arrive at their goal. I mean, obviously they made this post as sort of damage control and to maybe try to, you know, reset expectations or something. I think this is, you know, communication that we need to have. We don't hear from Ian enough anymore. Yeah. We used to hear from him on a monthly basis, which, you know, maybe that got repetitive. Maybe that wasn't the right schedule, but we definitely don't hear from him enough anymore. And so it's good he's been getting out in some other avenues lately with some of this midnight press. And this is a great example. I mean, you know, when we have big changes, we want to hear from the guy in charge what the philosophical direction is, and like what the real moving pieces are, and how the progress is going. We don't need promises, and we don't need hype and marketing. We just need to know, like, okay, what is guiding these decisions, and like what is the upshot of what players are going to experience. And I think this post sort of encompasses that to a degree. I mean, it's obvious they have a clear vision for what they want and what they expect to be happening. And I think they've also shown some willingness to flex on some things that maybe they didn't consider, at the outset of these changes and this whole process. So obviously I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm not going to play Midnight because they're doing these changes. Like it's, that's not where I'm landing. And I'm not saying it's not okay to land there if that's you, but it's a real kind of prove it thing. And I do think they are addressing legitimate problems here. He opens this section with sort of like, is this a problem we're trying to solve the players don't care about? I think the pervasiveness of add-ons and the amount of combat data that they've been able to pull, it has created problems whether you use them or not. Yeah. Right? Like it has warped the experience for everyone. So I personally do think that it's a problem. And I think there are ways to preserve what's good about add-ons and just make the overall ecosystem better. I'm also glad that he doesn't expect blind faith in the absence of results. That's a good passage to put in here, because I think it's fair as a player and a customer not to trust them to do this right the first time or to get it right quickly. And I don't think they're going to. I think it will stumble out of the gate and there will be good things and bad things. That's the whole history of the game from November 2004, right? Like there's always good stuff, there's always bad stuff, and there's always stuff that could be better, and there's stuff that is moving in the right direction and stuff that's moving in the wrong direction. And this is definitely the right direction, I think, for me as a player, but it's a question of, when do we arrive there and how long does it take? So at least they're not projecting in this post a sense of like uncertainty or like we're going to figure it out or we're going to assess or we think that we can get there. What they're projecting is we know what we want and we're confident in the tech that we have behind it. So, I mean, that's good to hear. Yeah. Now let's see how it plays.
Well, and it's great to get the better explanations around what some people have been asking questions about with different cosmetics about, hey, why is this cosmetic add-on breaking? What's going on with that? And just the explanations of, look, the way people built add-ons varies, and if they might have to rebuild it from scratch depending on how they chose to pull data from the game based off of these new rules and regulations coming in. That's unfortunate that they're running into that problem, but this is the reality we're moving forward to. And the reality is other people have built add-ons that do that same thing that didn't pull data that way and they work fine. So it's nice to have the explanations out there. But yeah, you're right. What's next part of this at the end here is important. For Addon Disarmament, where Ian says, as we kick off beta, we're excited to see a ton of new players get access to Midnight content, but we're especially eager to see structured testing of Endgame. The changes to add-ons don't come in a vacuum. They are complemented by a new approach to building raid encounters, dungeon pulls, combat mechanics, and more. So, we are looking forward to seeing players have that holistic experience. And we are looking for feedback, not just on our UI or evolving add-on capabilities, but on aspects of endgame combat that might feel unclear or unfair without some of the tools you are accustomed to using. We are going to be watching closely and listening to feedback throughout the beta. To us, the beta designation means that we have the entirety of the game's content ready for testing, but it is far from an endpoint to Midnight development. We will be agile and adaptive in close partnership with our community as we roll out regular updates in the weeks and months ahead, improving our base UI experience, adjusting tuning or presentation of mechanics, and adding new functionality for add-on developers. Thank you for taking the time to read through this. You're welcome, Ian. I understand that this amount of change can be scary, and that it's natural to worry that the long-term benefits aren't worth the short-term disruption. We are going to do everything possible to ensure that your experience with Midnight is a great one. That customization and self-expression remains hallmarks of WoW's UI, and that the game is more approachable than ever. So yeah, I mean, in general, again, I'm glad he stated we don't expect everyone to trust us right off the bat, but this is a very confident, reassuring post for the community overall. Especially how he signed his name at the end with the quill really nicely and prettily. It's very reassuring that he's able to put out a post like this that comes from a place of leadership. Like he is the head of WoW and what's happening with WoW. it's great to see him come into this as, hey, look, I'm confident with where we're at. I'm confident with where we're going. There's going to be stumbles along the way, but we are going to be agile. We are going to be adaptive. We are going to make sure that we pivot on these things. We're listening to our community. As you notice something wrong and you report it to us, we are going to be able to fix that. We are establishing a good system to handle that. So obviously we don't want something to be, hey, we reported something critically not functioning well in UI in the first weeks of the expansion, and we have to wait till the .5 patch to fix it. That's not something we want. We want this to be something where they are agile enough that in a hotfix patch, it can be resolved quite quickly. And I remember the days of World of Warcraft where they always waited until the major patch dates to be able to actually fix a number of problems that they could have hotfixed in. And when they finally decided, you know what, we're going to start hotfixing more of these in because the quality of life improvement now is so much more important than in 3 months when the .5 patch comes out. So I'm hoping that we see really, like, when he says agile, I want like Spider-Man level of agile. I want like, you know, my spider sense is tingling. The player base isn't happy with this. Quick, let's pivot and catch the bus before it hits the child kind of thing. Like, let's make sure we've got this handled okay. That's what I want to see in this.
Yeah, you know, they've shown some ability to move on stuff faster than we've come to expect in recent times, right? Like, I think of some stuff with edit mode and some other things they brought in where it's like, okay, this actually gets updated every 2 months. There's some new feature in the patch or whatever. So like they're starting to build some precedent with it. Yeah, I mean, he acknowledges that it can be scary, and it is. Like, I'm not gonna mince words about it, right? I think a lot of players are feeling that. There's a lot of stuff changing heading into this expansion. The game's been in a pretty stable and fun place for the last several years. After, you know, being kind of going through it there in the Shadowlands era and stuff. And it's like, you kind of just want to keep on that even keel and just keep, you know, following that model. That doesn't mean that there's not opportunities to improve, you know? And I think, you know, he mentions like the long-term benefits being worth the short-term disruption. And like, I do believe that the long-term benefits will be worth disruption. It's a question of, what kind of term are we talking about on that disruption, you know? And are there things that they currently don't feel like they can flex on that they're willing to, you know, that might end up being necessary, you know, and how long does that process ultimately take? I mean, I think the whole Shadowlands experience taught us that with enough tension, eventually they will give in on stuff that really matters to players. And I'm not saying that they're going to, you know, end up just reverting all these API changes, but there may be things that they don't want add-ons doing philosophically that they end up bending on, but because players benefit from it. And the question will be, you know, what does that timeline ultimately look like? But yeah, I mean, you know, he also mentions, I think it can be hard. Like if you follow WoW news, if you follow like a Wowhead RSS feed or something, and just getting this constant stream of like beta updates, it can be kind of hard to separate in your mind, like, okay, this is literally a testing process. Like none of this stuff is locked in. Yeah. Everything in WoW is subject to change anyway. Like there are things that are locked in. Okay. The story is the story. We're going to go to the zones. We're going, like the content is what it is. Right. But these things that are more, you know, systems or class gameplay focused are very fluid. They change a lot, even in the immediate wake of an expansion release or whatever. So none of this stuff is a locked in permanent change. There are no permanent changes in WoW. I think it's important to just keep that in mind. If you find yourself maybe getting just frustrated with the amount of stuff that's coming out as, you know, alpha and beta build data mining comes out and all this stuff seems to be floating around, it's like, you can just step back from it and, you know, just check back in once 12.0 is live. And then we start moving forward from a place of where players are actually playing from. So yeah, it's, I don't know. I'm glad they did this post. I am kind of sick about talking about this topic. I mean, we mentioned that I think last week, because the prior week we had another giant add-on post to talk about. And it's like, it seems to be absorbing all of the conversation around the game right now. It's like, it's the only thing that matters is, you know, which add-ons work and how do they work. And that is not what World of Warcraft is, right? Like as a product, as a game that you play, like it's not a framework that add-ons are built off of. It's a video game, right? It has its own concerns and things to present you with. So I think like a lot of other stuff is getting kind of crowded out by this persistent add-on discussion. I'm hoping that maybe a post like this turns some of that temperature down a little bit, and that like, yes, there's going to be things that add-ons can't do. Yes, there's going to be frustration. Yes, new options will be opened up. Yes, new add-ons will emerge that take advantage of the current framework in a way that can do things that you like. That would be great. And then we can get more into the nitty gritty of like, what are we playing and how are we playing it and how does it play and what's good or bad about that? And, you know, what else are we looking for? Or, you know, actually things that have to do with controlling your character inside the space in the game and in combat and doing stuff, instead of the sort of endless loop of like, well, these UI changes are bad, Blizzard, and Blizzard goes, well, we think they're good enough, but we'll make this change. And then they go, oh, well, this is okay, but I still can't do this. And that we've kind of been in that space for like 2 months now. I'm tired of it. I hope this short circuits it a little bit, at least for a while.
I think the raid testing will really be what does that to a certain degree. I think there'll be a large wave of feedback of what worked and what didn't based off raid testing. And I'm hopeful that enough of the larger raiding content creators come out and saying, this is good, this is working, we're happy, or this is good, they're on the right path, that it cools the conversation somewhat. That's what I'm hoping is the result of this. I'm not saying people should do that if they're not feeling that way. If something's not working, you need to report on it, and you need to make sure that Blizzard is aware of that. But I'm hoping that essentially this will be the first wave of proof of the direction of what they're trying to go and how that's going to work for players. So that's what I'm hoping for. And yeah, just to circle back to something you mentioned earlier, one of the big reasons why we exclude certain topics or certain changes from our show when we talk about certain things is beta and alpha is so dynamic and changes so often, and often, you know, something changing by 30% or 50% or whatever it is when it hasn't even released yet or been played with yet, it just has no real meaning. So it's important to recognize, like, when stuff's inside such a large state of flux, it's often better to be like, okay, let's wait until it's baked more and then actually have a look at this and talk about it, because otherwise you're just going to be constantly being like, oh, well, this went up today and that went down today and this went up today and that went down today and this went up today. And you're like, okay, but what does that mean? It doesn't really mean anything yet, because it's such an early phase that it's going to change 9 more times before it actually launches. You might as well talk about it when it's closer to launching. And so, yeah, I'm excited to see what the beta news is and what, you know, the people who get in there and test and raid test and whatnot feel about it and say about it for that experience. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, with that, I'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons. They contribute a ton to our show and help us to improve on the content we create. Today, I'm giving a special shout out to Arajian, Anthony, Bradley, Bruce, Chris, James, Garrett, Kapawi, and Shorel. Thank you so much for supporting the show in the Patreon, and thank you to all of our patrons, past and present. We appreciate you and everything that you give towards each episode to make sure they happen each week, even one where I have a death in the family and Jason's leaving on vacation for a week. We've still got an episode. It's going to be here. I'll make sure this thing gets out this week, and that we're able to record one when Jason's back next week at some point. That'll be something we make sure happens. So thank a patron if you enjoy the show and like listening to it, because it means everything to us that you all show up and listen. And if you're looking to become a patron, head on over to patreon.com/thestartingzone, and you can sign up there to whatever tier you want to support at. And we just appreciate it. So thanks so much, patrons.
Absolutely, patrons. We couldn't do without you. So thank you for all the support over the many years that we've been doing this. It means a lot. It's the reason why you get regular episodes for sure. And yeah, I mean, you know, I think doing the show is great, and we would want to do it no matter what. But having the patrons have our back means that we can prioritize it in a way that we wouldn't be able to otherwise. So yeah, thank you so much, and everybody have fun in beta if you can log in there while I'm away from my computer for a while.
Indeed. If you've enjoyed this episode, another great way to support us is going over to your iTunes, your Apple Podcasts, your Spotify. Leave us those 5-star reviews. They really help us out. They move us up those charts, help more people find the show. And it's always fun to read them when we can. So we appreciate those reviews. That's going to wrap up episode 710 of The Starting Zone. If you want to check out show notes for this episode or leave us a comment on the show, you can head on over to thestartingzone.com, the official website for the Starting Zone podcast. If you want to check the show notes or leave us a comment or feedback, you can do that by emailing us at thestartingzone@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us on Blue Sky at thestartingzone.bsky.social, or over on X at The Starting Zone, or you can hop over to thestartingzone.com/Discord and join our Discord server over there. Yeah, like I said, show notes are on thestartingzone.com. You go over there, you can find all the show notes and things for that. And Jason, where can folks find you on the internet?
You can find me on socials over on Twitter at Shieldwald or on Blue Sky at jlucas.bsky.social. Mostly just post stuff to Blue Sky, but I hang out in both places, so come say hi wherever. You can find video channels at twitch.tv/Shieldwald and youtube.com/Shieldwald. Streams would be kind of light. Definitely not going to be streaming this week because I won't be around, but we'll get back into it. Maybe with with patch coming up and everything. There's a lot of solo stuff to do. It might be time to, hang out and do some of that. So check out the video channels as well.
Yeah. If you're trying to find me, you can find me on my socials at spencerhd.bsky.social, at Spencer_Downey on X, and twitch.tv/SpencerHD, or youtube.com/@SpencerHD. And with that, for Jason and myself, we want to say thanks for listening, and jobs done.